My only crime was denouncing Islam and accepting Jesus of the Christian. As for me, a crown prince of Saudi Arabia prosecuted because of my new belief. They say a man can lose everything in a single moment. For me, it happened twice. The first time, I lost my wife to my father's command, forced to watch as tradition and power tore apart everything I loved. I was Prince Emir of Saudi Arabia, surrounded by gold and servants, yet powerless to protect the woman I cherished. The second time, I lost my kingdom by choice. I traded my palace for a desert crossing, my royal title for a death sentence, my inheritance for a forbidden book that promised something my wealth never could: freedom. They're hunting me now. My own family has put a price on my head. The crime? I chose Jesus over the throne. I chose love over tradition. I chose to be a refugee rather than a prince who lived without a soul. This is the story of how I escaped Saudi Arabia with nothing but my wife, my faith, and the clothes on my back. This is the story of what it costs to follow your conscience when everything, your family, your religion, your entire world, demands you stay silent. My name is Prince Emir. This is how I lost everything to find what truly matters. The morning sun cast golden rays across the marble floors of the palace, turning everything it touched into liquid amber. Prince Emir stood on his private balcony, overlooking the sprawling gardens that stretched as far as the eye could see. Fountains danced in the distance, their waters catching the light like scattered diamonds. This was his world, a world of unimaginable wealth and privilege, yet on this particular morning, it felt like a prison. He turned back into his chambers, where Layla, his wife of 3 years, sat by the window, her dark eyes fixed on something far beyond the palace walls. She had been quiet for days now, ever since they had received the summons from his father, King Khalid. "Layla," Emir said softly, approaching her. "We must go soon. My father expects us." She looked up at him, and he saw something in her expression that made his heart clench. Fear. No, not just fear. Resignation. "I know," she whispered. Emir had grown up in the palace, the youngest son of King Khalid, surrounded by brothers who competed for their father's favor and attention. Unlike them, Emir had never craved power. He had found his happiness in simpler things: poetry, philosophy, and most of all, in Layla. Their marriage had been arranged, as was custom, but what had begun as duty had blossomed into genuine love. She was his confidant, his joy, his anchor in a world that often felt hollow despite its opulence. But now that world was about to shatter. The throne room was vast, with soaring ceilings supported by columns inlaid with gold. King Khalid sat upon his throne, a man in his 60s whose presence still commanded absolute authority. His beard was streaked with gray, his eyes sharp and unyielding. Around him stood his advisors and religious leaders, men in white thobes whose faces Emir had known since childhood. "Emir, my son," the king's voice boomed across the chamber. "Approach." Emir walked forward, Layla a step behind him as was expected. His heart hammered in his chest, though he kept his face composed. He had been summoned before his father countless times, but today felt different. The air was thick with tension. "Father," Emir said, bowing his head respectfully. King Khalid leaned forward, his fingers drumming on the armrest of his throne. "You have been blessed with a beautiful wife, Emir. Layla is known throughout the kingdom for her grace and beauty." Emir felt ice creep down his spine. "Yes, father. I am grateful." "As am I," the king said, and those 3 words changed everything. There was a long silence. Emir's mind raced, trying to understand what his father meant, though part of him already knew. He had heard whispers of such things, ancient customs that some of the older generations still practiced, traditions that elevated the king's authority above all else, even above the bonds of marriage. "It is my right," King Khalid continued, his voice matter-of-fact, "as your king and as your father, to share in the blessings of my sons." Layla will honor me as she honors you. This is not a request, Amir. This is how it has always been done. The words hit Amir like physical blows. He felt Layla's hand tremble in his, felt the eyes of every man in the room upon them. His mouth opened, but no words came out. What could he say? To refuse his father was to commit treason. To refuse the king was to invite death. Father, Amir's voice cracked. Please, there must be another way. There is no other way. The king's voice thundered through the chamber. Do you dare to question me? Do you dare to place your own desires above the will of your king? One of the religious leaders stepped forward, his face stern. This is tradition, Prince Amir. It is the right of the king to demonstrate his authority. To refuse is to dishonor your family and your faith. Amir looked at Layla. Tears streamed silently down her face, but she said nothing. She couldn't. She had no voice here, no choice. She was a possession, passed from one man to another like the golden cups that adorned the palace tables. You have until tomorrow evening, King Khalid said, waving his hand dismissively. Prepare her. And Amir, the king's eyes narrowed. Do not disappoint me. The walk back to their chambers was the longest of Amir's life. Neither he nor Layla spoke. What was there to say? When they finally reached their rooms and the heavy doors closed behind them, Layla collapsed to the floor, her body racked with sobs. Amir knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms, but he had no comfort to offer. He was supposed to protect her, to cherish her, and instead he was powerless. His wealth, his title, his position meant nothing. He was as trapped as she was. I'm so sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry, Layla. That night, Amir couldn't sleep. He stood on his balcony again, staring up at the stars that seemed so distant and indifferent. His mind churned with anger, grief, and a growing sense of desperation. He had been raised to believe in the righteousness of his faith, in the wisdom of tradition, in the absolute authority of the king. But how could any of this be right? How could a faith that claimed to honor family allow a father to do this to his son? How could a God who claimed to be merciful permit such cruelty? For the first time in his life, Prince Amir began to question everything he had been taught. And in that moment of doubt, in that dark night of the soul, a seed was planted. A seed that would grow into something that would change his life forever. He didn't know it yet, but his journey was just beginning. The next day passed in a blur of anguish. Amir moved through the palace like a ghost, unable to eat, unable to think clearly. Servants whispered as he passed, word of the king's decree having spread through the palace like wildfire. Some looked at him with pity, others with barely concealed contempt. How weak he must seem, unable to control his own wife, unable to stand up to his father. But it wasn't weakness that paralyzed him. It was the realization that he was trapped in a system that valued power over love, tradition over justice, obedience over humanity. As evening approached, the time drawing nearer to when he would have to bring Layla to his father's chambers, Amir found himself walking the palace corridors aimlessly. He couldn't face going back to their rooms, couldn't face seeing the despair in Layla's eyes. He found himself in a part of the palace he rarely visited, near the servants' quarters. It was here, in a quiet corner, that he encountered someone unexpected. Prince Amir. He turned to see Marcus, one of the palace's foreign workers, a man from the Philippines who had served in the palace for years. Marcus was in his 50s, with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. He was a Christian, one of the few non-Muslims permitted to work in the palace, and he had always treated Amir with quiet respect. Marcus, Amir said, his voice hollow. Marcus looked at him with such compassion that Amir nearly broke down right there. I heard what happened, Your Highness. I am deeply sorry. Sorry, Amir repeated bitterly. What good is sorry? Perhaps none, Marcus said quietly. But I know what it is to suffer. And I know that in suffering, we sometimes find truth. Amir stared at him. What truth? That I am powerless? That my faith teaches one thing but practices another? That God is cruel? God is not cruel, Prince Amir. Men are cruel. Then where is your God? Amir demanded, his voice rising. Where is he when innocent people suffer? When women are treated like property? When fathers betray their sons? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his robe and pulled out a small, worn book. Amir recognized it immediately. A Bible. Possession of such a book was illegal in the kingdom for a Muslim. Even being seen with it could result in severe punishment. I should not show you this, Marcus said. But I believe you need to see it. Why would I want to read that? Amir asked, but even as he spoke, he felt a strange curiosity stirring within him. Because it contains the words of someone who also suffered unjustly, Marcus said. Someone who understood what it meant to be betrayed by those he loved. Someone who chose love even when faced with hatred. Amir looked at the book, then at Marcus. If anyone sees me with this, then we will both be punished, Marcus said simply. But I think perhaps that risk is worth taking. Against every instinct, every teaching, every warning he had ever received, Amir reached out and took the book. It felt strangely heavy in his hands, as if it contained more than just pages and words. Read the Gospel of John, Marcus said softly. Start with chapter 13. Then, if you wish, we can talk. With that, Marcus bowed and walked away, leaving Amir alone in the corridor, holding a forbidden book that could cost him everything. That night, after he had fulfilled the unbearable duty his father had demanded, after he had delivered Layla to the king's chambers and walked away with tears streaming down his face, Amir returned to his rooms and locked the door. He pulled out the Bible that he had hidden beneath his robes and, with trembling hands, opened it. The pages were thin, marked with Marcus's notes and underlines. Amir found the Gospel of John, chapter 13, and began to read. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. The words seemed to leap off the page. Love, not power, not tradition, not obedience to earthly authority. Love. He read on, through the night, through chapter after chapter. He read about Jesus washing his disciples' feet, a king serving those beneath him. He read about Jesus facing betrayal with forgiveness. He read about a God who didn't demand that others be sacrificed for his pleasure, but who sacrificed himself for others. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Amir's hands shook as he read. This was everything he had been taught to reject. Everything he had been told was false. But in that moment, sitting in his empty chambers while his wife was with his father, these words felt more true than anything he had ever known. He read about Jesus speaking to the woman at the well, treating her with dignity when society said she deserved none. He read about Jesus defending the woman caught in adultery, standing between her and those who would stone her. He read about a God who valued each person, who saw women not as property but as beloved children. Where was this kind of love in his own faith? Where was this kind of mercy in his own tradition? As dawn broke, Amir closed the book. His eyes were red from crying and from reading in the dim lamplight. But something had changed inside him. A door had been opened that could never be closed again. When Layla returned to their chambers in the morning, her face blank with trauma, Amir held her close and made a decision. He didn't tell her yet. He didn't tell anyone. But in his heart, Prince Amir knew that he could no longer serve a system that caused such pain. He could no longer follow a faith that permitted such cruelty. Over the following weeks, Amir met with Marcus in secret, always careful, always watching for spies. They talked about Jesus, about grace, about a love that transcended law and tradition. Marcus gave him more books, more materials, all smuggled into the palace at great risk. Christianity isn't perfect, Marcus told him one evening. Christians have done terrible things throughout history, but Jesus, his message, his life, that is something pure. That is something worth believing in. But if I convert, Amir said, I will lose everything. My family, my position, perhaps my life. Yes, Marcus said simply. Jesus promised his followers that they would suffer for following him. But he also promised them something else. Freedom. Not freedom from consequences, but freedom in your soul. Freedom from the chains of guilt and shame and powerlessness. Freedom. Amir had never felt free in his life, despite all his wealth and privilege. He had been bound by expectations, by traditions, by the weight of a system that crushed those beneath it. 3 months after that terrible night when his father had first demanded Layla, 3 months of secret meetings and hidden readings and growing faith, Prince Amir knelt in Marcus's small room and prayed a prayer he had never prayed before. Jesus, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. I don't fully understand who you are, but I believe you love me. I believe you see my pain. I believe you offer something better than what I have known. If you are real, if your love is true, then I want to follow you, no matter the cost. In that moment, something shifted in Amir's heart. It wasn't dramatic. There were no visions, no voices from heaven. But he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not peace in his circumstances, which were still terrible, but peace in his soul. He had found something worth more than all the gold in his father's palace. He had found hope. For several weeks after his conversion, Amir managed to keep his new faith hidden. He continued to attend prayers in the palace mosque, moving through the motions while his heart was elsewhere. He was careful, deliberate, telling no one except Marcus and Layla. Layla's reaction had been mixed. When he first told her, sitting in their chambers late one night, she had looked at him with fear. Amir, do you know what you're saying? Do you know what they'll do to you if they find out? I know, he had said, taking her hands. But I can't pretend anymore, Layla. I can't serve a faith that allowed what happened to you to us. I found something different, something better. She had been silent for a long time, then whispered, Tell me about it. So he did. Night after night, he shared what he had learned, read passages from the Bible that Marcus had given him, spoke about Jesus with a passion he had never felt before. Layla listened, asked questions, and slowly, cautiously began to believe as well. If we do this, she said one night, we must be prepared to lose everything. We've already lost what matters most, Amir replied. Our dignity, our love, our freedom. What else is there to lose? But he was about to find out that there was much more at stake. It was his oldest brother, Prince Faisal, who first noticed the change. Faisal was ambitious, always watching for any weakness in his siblings that he could exploit. At a family dinner one evening, he made a comment that set off alarm bells in Amir's mind. You've been distant lately, brother, Faisal said, his eyes calculating. You no longer join us for evening prayers with the same enthusiasm. Is something troubling you? Nothing troubles me, Amir said carefully. I've simply been preoccupied with personal matters. Personal matters, Faisal repeated, his lips curling into a slight smile. Yes, I imagine you would be. Father's decision must have been difficult for you. Amir's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Although, Faisal continued, I did hear something interesting from the servants. They say you've been spending time with that Christian worker, Marcus. Why would that be? The table fell silent. Amir's mother, seated at the far end, looked up with concern. His other brothers watched with varying expressions of curiosity and suspicion. Marcus is a good man, Amir said evenly. We've had conversations about philosophy. Philosophy, Faisal said, drawing out the word. How fascinating. What kind of philosophy does a Christian servant have to offer a Muslim prince? Before Amir could respond, his father's voice cut through the tension. Enough, Faisal. If Amir wishes to speak with servants, that is his business. But the seed of suspicion had been planted, and Faisal was not one to let go easily. 2 days later, palace guards searched Amir's chambers while he was out. He returned to find his rooms in disarray, and his heart sank. The Bible. He had hidden it carefully beneath a loose stone in the floor, but if they had been thorough, looking for something, brother? Amir spun around to find Faisal standing in his doorway, holding the worn Bible in his hands. This is a serious offense, Amir, Faisal said, his voice dripping with false concern. Possessing a Bible is forbidden. But I suppose you know that. Give that back, Amir said, his voice low and dangerous. Back? To whom? To you. Faisal laughed. I don't think so. Father will want to see this. And the religious leaders. They'll want to ask you some questions. Faisal, please. Please. Faisal's expression hardened. You've always thought yourself better than the rest of us, Amir. Always with your poetry and your philosophy, looking down on our traditions. Well, now you'll face the consequences of your arrogance. Within the hour, Amir was summoned before his father and a council of religious leaders. The throne room that had once been a place of family gatherings now felt like a courtroom. King Khalid's face was dark with anger, and the religious leaders looked at Amir with expressions ranging from disappointment to fury. Is it true? His father demanded without preamble. Have you been reading Christian texts? Have you been meeting in secret with the Christian servant? There was no point in lying. They had the evidence, and Faisal would have already told them everything. Yes, Amir said, lifting his chin. It's true. A murmur ran through the assembled men. One of the senior religious leaders, Sheikh Ahmad, stepped forward. He was an elderly man whom Amir had known since childhood, who had taught him the Quran when he was young. Amir, Sheikh Ahmad said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Why would you do such a thing? Have we not taught you well? Have we not shown you the truth of Islam? You have shown me many things, Sheikh, Amir said quietly. But you have not shown me love. You have not shown me mercy. You have shown me tradition and law and power, but not the kind of love that values people above rules. Love? His father roared, rising from his throne. You dare speak of love? After all we have given you? After all the privilege and wealth you have enjoyed? Yes, father, Amir said, and his voice was steady now. I dare speak of love, because I have found something you can never give me. I have found a faith that sees Layla as more than property. I have found a God who doesn't demand that sons be humiliated for his glory. The silence that followed was deafening. You have committed apostasy, Sheikh Ahmad said, his voice grave. This is one of the gravest sins in Islam. The punishment is clear. I know the punishment, Amir said, and I accept it. King Khalid descended from his throne, stopping directly in front of his son. For a moment, Amir saw something flicker in his father's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or regret. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by cold fury. You are no longer my son, the king said. You have 1 week to recant this madness, to publicly renounce this false faith and return to Islam. If you do not, you will be arrested and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Do you understand? I understand, Amir said. Then get out of my sight. Amir turned and walked out of the throne room, his head held high even as his heart shattered. He had known this moment would come, had prepared himself for it. But nothing could truly prepare you for hearing your father disown you, for seeing the place you had called home become a prison. He found Layla in their chambers, packing frantically. We have to leave, she said, her voice urgent. Marcus came and warned me. They're going to arrest you, Amir. Tonight. Your father gave you a week, but Faisal is pushing for immediate action. How do you know this? Marcus has friends among the guards. They're loyal to him, and they don't agree with what's happening. But we only have a few hours. Maybe less. Amir looked around at their chambers, at the life he had known. The silk curtains, the expensive furnishings, the view of the gardens that had been his since childhood. All of it meaningless now. Then we leave, he said. Now. What about Marcus? He's arranged transport, Layla said. He's risking everything for us, Amir. If they find out he helped us. I know, Amir said quietly. I know what he's risking. They took only what they could carry. Some clothes, a small amount of money that Amir had kept hidden, and the Bible that Marcus had given him, which one of the sympathetic guards had managed to retrieve. Everything else they left behind. As they slipped through the servants' corridors that night, guided by Marcus, Amir took one last look at the palace. It rose against the night sky, magnificent and terrible, a monument to power and wealth built on the backs of the powerless. Are you ready? Marcus whispered. Amir looked at Layla, saw the fear and determination in her eyes. He thought about what they were leaving behind and what they were moving toward. An uncertain future, poverty, exile, perhaps death, but also freedom, true freedom. Yes, he said. I'm ready. They slipped out into the night, 3 figures disappearing into the darkness, leaving behind a kingdom and stepping into the unknown. Behind them, the palace lights blazed, and within its walls, men plotted and schemed, not knowing that their prince was already gone. The vehicle Marcus had arranged was an old delivery truck, dusty and unremarkable, the kind that made regular trips to the border without attracting attention. In the back, hidden beneath stacks of crates and boxes, Amir and Layla crouched in a cramped space that smelled of cardboard and diesel fuel. Stay quiet, Marcus had whispered before they left. Don't move, don't speak, no matter what happens. The driver is trustworthy, but there will be checkpoints. That had been 3 hours ago. Now, as the truck rumbled along the highway, Amir held Layla close in the darkness, feeling every bump in the road, every sudden stop that might signal disaster. His body ached from the cramped position, but he didn't dare shift. He thought about what they had left behind. Not the wealth, surprisingly. Not the palace or the servants or the luxury. What haunted him was his mother's face. She hadn't been in the throne room during his confrontation with his father, but word would have reached her by now. Would she understand? Would she mourn him? Or would she, like his father, simply erase him from her heart? The truck suddenly slowed, and Amir's heart leapt into his throat. He felt Layla stiffen beside him. Checkpoint, came the muffled voice of the driver through the partition. They heard voices outside, sharp and commanding. The back doors of the truck opened, and light flooded in. Through the cracks between the crates, Amir could see the silhouettes of border guards. What are you carrying? A voice demanded. Agricultural supplies. The driver responded, his voice bored and routine. Fertilizer, tools, irrigation equipment. Going to the border farms. Open some of these crates. Amir heard the sound of crowbars prying open wood. His pulse thundered in his ears. One of the crates near them creaked as it was opened. Seems in order, another voice said. But we've been told to be extra vigilant tonight. There's word that some criminals might be trying to flee the kingdom. Criminals? The driver said. What kind? Political enemies. Apostates. The worst kind. There was a long pause. Amir could barely breathe. He felt Layla's hand gripping his so tightly it hurt. I haven't seen anyone but regular workers, the driver said. But I'll keep my eyes open. See that you do. These people are dangerous, corrupting our society with their foreign ideas. More sounds of movement. Then finally, blessedly, the doors closed. The truck's engine rumbled to life, and they were moving again. Neither Amir nor Layla spoke. They didn't dare, not yet. They remained frozen in their hiding place for another hour until the truck finally stopped and the driver's voice came through. We're clear. You can come out now. They emerged into the pre-dawn darkness, their limbs cramping and sore. They were in a small settlement near the border, little more than a collection of buildings around a dusty road. The driver, a weathered man in his 40s, looked at them with sympathy. "Marcus is a good man," he said. "He saved my son's life once when he was sick. I owe him this debt, but I cannot take you further. From here you must find your own way." "Where are we?" Amir asked. 10 kilometers from the border with Jordan. There's a crossing point, unofficial, used by Bedouins and smugglers. Follow the road east until you see a cluster of 3 large rocks. Turn north from there and walk for 2 hours. You'll find people who can help you cross. He handed them a bag. Food, water, and some money. "It's not much, but it's all I can spare. Go with God." Before Amir could thank him, the driver had climbed back into his truck and driven away, leaving them alone in the darkness. "Come on," Amir said, shouldering the bag. "We need to move before it gets light." They walked through the darkness, 2 figures in a vast desert landscape, leaving behind everything they had ever known. Layla had changed from her fine clothes into simple workers' garments that Marcus had provided, and Amir wore the plain thobe of a common man. Without their expensive fabrics and jewelry, they were invisible, just 2 more poor travelers in a land full of them. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they found the 3 rocks the driver had mentioned. They turned north, leaving the road behind, walking across sand and scrub. "Are you all right?" Amir asked Layla after an hour of silent walking. "No," she said honestly. "I'm terrified. I'm exhausted. I don't know what's going to happen to us." She paused, then added, "But I'm free. For the first time in my life, I'm free." They walked on, the sun climbing higher, the heat beginning to press down on them. Amir's feet, used to palace floors and soft shoes, began to blister in the rough sandals Marcus had given him. But he didn't stop, couldn't stop. Behind them was a kingdom that wanted him dead. Ahead was uncertainty, but also hope. After 2 hours, they saw figures in the distance. Amir's hand went instinctively to his side, where he used to carry a ceremonial dagger, but of course it wasn't there. They had nothing to defend themselves with. As the figures drew closer, Amir saw they were Bedouins, nomadic people who moved freely across borders that meant little in the vast desert. An older man, his face weathered by years in the sun, raised a hand in greeting. "Peace be upon you," he said in Arabic. "And upon you peace," Amir responded. The man's eyes assessed them, taking in their fear and exhaustion. "You are fleeing something." It wasn't a question, but Amir nodded. "Yes." "The authorities?" "Yes." The old Bedouin was quiet for a moment, then said, "We do not involve ourselves in the politics of kingdoms, but we also do not turn away those who need help. Come, we will feed you and show you the way across the border. What you do after that is your own affair." They were taken to a camp of tents where women prepared food over open fires and children played in the sand. The Bedouins asked no questions, offered no judgment. They simply provided hospitality, as desert people had done for thousands of years. That night, as Amir and Layla sat around a fire eating simple bread and dates, the old Bedouin sat with them. "In the desert," he said, "we learn that borders are illusions created by men. The sand knows no kingdoms. The wind obeys no kings. You are leaving one place for another, but remember this. Wherever you go, you carry yourself with you. Your burdens, your beliefs, your choices. Make sure they are worth carrying." "They are," Amir said quietly. The old man nodded. "Then may God guide your path." The next morning, before dawn, 2 young Bedouin men led them to the border crossing. It was nothing dramatic, no fence or checkpoint, just a place where the land on one side became the land on another side, distinguished only by the maps men drew. "Walk north," one of the young men said, pointing. "In half a day you will reach a town. From there you can find transport to Amman." "Thank you," Amir said. "I have nothing to repay you with." "The desert provides for all," the young man said with a smile. Perhaps one day, you will help someone else who is fleeing. And then they were alone again, walking north into Jordan, into exile, into a future unknown. As the sun rose fully, Amir stopped and looked back. In the distance, somewhere beyond the horizon, was Saudi Arabia, his homeland, the place of his birth and his wealth and his pain. He thought about his father, his brothers, his mother. Would they remember him? Would they speak his name? Or would he simply be erased? Another prince who had fallen from grace? No looking back, Layla said softly, taking his hand. Only forward now. She was right. The past was gone. There was only the future, uncertain and frightening and free. They walked on, two refugees in a vast world, carrying nothing but faith and hope in each other. And somehow it was enough. The town they reached by midday was called Al-Mafraq, a small Jordanian settlement that served as a crossroads for travelers and refugees. It was dusty and crowded, full of people from various countries, all of them carrying stories of displacement and survival. Amir and Layla stumbled into the town exhausted and sunburned, their water nearly gone. They had no identification papers, no legal status, nothing but the clothes on their backs and the money the truck driver had given them. "We need to find a church," Amir said. Marcus said that churches help refugees. They asked directions from a street vendor, who pointed them to a small building at the edge of town. It was nothing like the grand mosques of Saudi Arabia, just a simple structure with a cross on top. But to Amir it looked like sanctuary. Inside, they found a priest, Father Joseph, a Jordanian man in his 60s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. When Amir explained their situation, speaking in halting phrases about conversion and persecution and flight, Father Joseph listened without interruption. "You are not the first to come here fleeing Saudi Arabia," he said when Amir finished. "And you will not be the last. You are safe here, but we must be careful. The Saudi government has influence even here, and if they discover where you are..." "We understand," Amir said. "We just need help getting somewhere safer. Somewhere we can start again. There is a Christian community in a village north of here," Father Joseph said. "It's small, poor, but safe. Many refugees have found shelter there. I can arrange transport, but it will take a few days." Those few days stretched into a week as Father Joseph worked to secure their passage and false identity papers. During that time, Amir and Layla stayed in a small room behind the church, barely leaving, terrified that they might be recognized or reported. It was during this week that the full weight of what they had done truly hit them. They had no money, no prospects, no family. Everything they had built their lives around was gone. One night, Amir woke to find Layla crying quietly in the darkness. "What have we done?" she whispered. "We've given up everything, Amir. What if we were wrong? What if we've made a terrible mistake?" Amir held her close, but he had no easy answers. "I don't know if we'll ever be comfortable again," he said. "I don't know if we'll ever be safe. But I know that I couldn't live in that palace anymore. I couldn't watch my father's world continue and pretend it was right. But what if we die here? What if our children, if we ever have children, grow up in poverty because of choices we made? Then they'll grow up free," Amir said. "They'll grow up knowing that their mother and father chose what was right over what was easy. Isn't that worth something?" Layla was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "I hope so. I really hope so." Finally, Father Joseph came to them with news. "I have arranged for you to travel to the village of Khirbet al-Sak. It's remote in the hills. There's a small Christian community there.